Good day. In a nation where family is, well, everything, it's hard to grasp, isn't it? How could a mother possibly inflict fatal harm on her own child?
It's truly chilling.
What happens when that person, the one meant to protect, becomes the very source of unimaginable pain?
It shakes you.
Today, we're diving deep into a Supreme Court case that really gripped the Philippines. It forces us to look at the darkest possibilities within the home.
What truths were uncovered? And maybe more importantly, what does it say about our duty to protect the most vulnerable among us?
Exactly. This is a significant Supreme Court decision we're examining today. The case is the people of the Philippines versus Salve Gonzales y Torno.
That's GR No 217022, and the decision came down on June 3rd, 2019.
Okay, so we'll unpack the facts, trace its path through the lower courts,
The RTC and the CA.
pinpoint the key issue that landed it in the Supreme Court, and then, of course, look at the final ruling.
Our aim is really to understand the nuts and bolts of this case and, well, what it means.
All right, let's start there. People v. Salve Gonzales y Torno, GR Num 217022, June 3, 2019. This was an appeal, right? She was challenging the Court of Appeals decision.
That's correct. The CA had already affirmed the trial court's guilty verdict. She was convicted of parricide for the death of her son, Ronald Gonzales. He was only 13.
So take us back to the beginning. What were the facts laid out before the trial court? How did this all start?
Well, the legal process kicked off with an information filed back on September 22, 2009.
Okay.
This document formally charged Salve Gonzales with parricide. It alleged that around September 16, 2009, in Quezon City, she caused Ronald's death.
And how? What did it allege specifically?
It specifically mentioned hitting him on the head with a broomstick, a Wally's Tombo, as it's known locally.
Wow. And her plea?
When she was arraigned, she pleaded not guilty.
Now, before the trial really got going, you mentioned a pretrial stipulation. What was agreed upon there?
Yes. That's actually quite important. In the pretrial, both sides agreed on certain facts to speed things up.
Makes sense.
They stipulated, meaning they agreed on Salve Gonzales' identity and, crucially, that she was indeed Ronald's mother.
So that established the relationship element needed for a parricide charge right off the bat, didn't it?
Precisely. That fundamental piece was undisputed from the start.
Okay, so with that settled, the prosecution started presenting its case. Who did they call as witnesses?
Their case really rested heavily on the testimony of Salve's two other children. Ray, the eldest son, was 15 at the time.
15. And the other?
His younger sister, Russell, who was just 11.
Kids testifying against their own mother. That must have been incredibly difficult. What did Ray say happened?
Ray testified that on September 16, 2009, their mother came home drunk. She found out Ronald had sold some electrical wire.
Okay.
And she just lost it. He said she hit Ronald repeatedly with a clothes hanger first, hit him so hard it actually broke.
Good hanger.
Yeah. And it didn't stop there. He said she then grabbed the wooden handle of a broom.
The Wally's Tambo handle mentioned in the charge.
Exactly. And she started hitting Ronald with that on his legs, arms, his body, and, critically, on his head. Ray also testified he heard Ronald begging her to stop.
Just devastating to imagine. Did the younger sister, Russell, see the same thing?
Yes, Rachel, the 11-year-old, she corroborated Ray's account. She also described seeing her mother hit Ronald with the hanger and then with the broom handle.
Where does she say he was hit?
Legs, arms, and head. She mentioned he was lying on the bed during the beating. Both kids also talked about the next morning.
What happened then?
They both said Ronald was incredibly weak, he was vomiting, couldn't even eat. And Ray added another horrifying detail.
What was that?
He testified that his mother actually inserted the broom handle into Ronald's mouth that morning, while he was clearly unwell.
Unbelievable. Were there any other witnesses besides the children?
Yes, the prosecution also called Glenna Gonzales. She was Salve's sister-in-law, so Ronald's aunt.
And what did the aunt testify to?
Glenna said she went to Salve's house on the morning of September 17th and found Ronald unconscious, pale. She couldn't feel his pulse.
Oh my God, so she tried to get help.
Immediately. But she said Salve initially dismissed it, saying Ronald was just pretending, told her to leave him at home.
Pretending while unconscious.
That's what Glenna testified, Salve said. Despite that, Glenna rushed him first to a clinic and then to East Avenue Medical Center.
Good for her for acting. What about the medical evidence? That must have been key.
Absolutely critical. Dr. Philippine Porcincula Jr., the medico-legal officer, examined Ronald's body on September 18th.
And his findings.
His report detailed significant swelling on the left side of Ronald's head and internally, a severe brain hemorrhage with blood clots.
So the cause of death was clear.
Yes, Dr. Porciuncula concluded the direct cause of death was a forceful blow from a blunt object. Importantly, he addressed the possibility of a fall.
What did he say about that?
He stated it was very remote that a fall alone could cause those specific head injuries, especially without other injuries you'd expect from a significant fall.
Okay, so the prosecution paints a picture of extreme abuse leading to death, backed by the kid's testimony and the medical expert. What was Salve Gonzalez's side of the story? What did the defense say?
Well, Salve testified herself. She was the only defense witness. Her story was very different.
How so?
She claimed she only hit Ronald once, on his hands, with a hanger, just as discipline for selling the wire. That's it.
Only once, on the hands. What about the head injury?
She testified that the next morning, Ronald told her he had fallen from the top bunk bed.
Ah, the fall defense.
Right. She said she noticed him vomiting, gave him a hot drink, and later told him to go to his aunt's house. She claimed she followed him to the clinic and then the hospital, where he eventually died.
A huge difference between the two accounts. Severe beating versus one hit and a fall. How did the first court, the regional trial court, rule?
The RTC weighed all the evidence and found Salve Gonzales guilty, beyond reasonable doubt, of parricide.
And the sentence?
Reclusion Perpetua, which is essentially life imprisonment under Philippine law.
Were there damages awarded too?
Yes. She was ordered to pay Ronald's heirs P75,000 for civil indemnity, P50,000 for moral damages, and P25,000 for exemplary damages.
And the basis for the RTC's decision?
They clearly found the children's testimonies ran Russell's, detailing that severe beating to be credible and consistent with the medical findings. They didn't buy the defense's version.
Okay, so after the RTC conviction, she appealed to the Court of Appeals. What were her main arguments there?
She raised two main points on appeal. First, she argued the prosecution simply hadn't proven her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, still pushing the accident narrative, essentially.
In the second point?
She argued that even if the court found her responsible, they should apply the mitigating circumstance of lack of intention to commit so grave a wrong, basically saying she didn't mean to kill him.
How did the prosecution, the Office of the Solicitor General, respond to that?
The OSG pushed back hard. They argued the kid's testimony showed sadistic acts, not discipline. And they said the lack of intent argument didn't hold water.
What?
Because the level of violence used, breaking a hanger, then repeatedly using a broom handle, hitting the head, was so disproportionate to selling some wire. They argued those actions were inherently likely to cause serious harm or death.
So the Court of Appeals had to review all this. What was their decision?
The CA affirmed the RTC's decision. They upheld the conviction.
On what grounds?
They agreed that her defense, basically just denial, couldn't overcome the positive, consistent testimonies of her own children. They found the kids credible.
And the mitigating circumstance?
They rejected that too. The CA agreed with the RTC and the OSG that her actions were more than sufficient to cause death, negating any claim of lack of intent in the legal sense.
Which brings us to the highest court. What was the core issue put before the Supreme Court?
It really boiled down to one question. Did the Court of Appeals make a mistake in upholding the trial court's conviction? Was there a reversible error in law or fact?
And the Supreme Court's final verdict?
The Supreme Court denied the appeal. They upheld the conviction, affirming the CA's decision, although they did tweak the monetary awards slightly.
So they agreed with the lower court's findings?
Yes. They went back to the definition of parricide under Article 246 of the revised Penal Code. Killing. Check. Killer identified as the accused. Check. Victim is the child of the accused. Check. The birth certificate established that, and it was stipulated anyway. All elements were present.
Did they specifically comment on the children's testimony?
They did. The SC gave it full credence, significant weight. They noted how unlikely it was for young children to make up such a horrific story against their own mother.
Especially one they depended on after their father died.
Exactly. They found the testimonies consistent, believable, and saw no sign of ill will. Plus, critically, the testimonies lined up with the medical legal report.
Right, the medical evidence contradicting the false story.
Precisely. The court highlighted the doctor's conclusion that death was from a blow by a blunt object, and that a fall was a very remote possibility for those injuries. That physical evidence strongly corroborated the children.
So Salve's denial defense just didn't stand up?
No. The SC reiterated that denial is a weak defense, especially against positive identification by credible witnesses, in this case, her own children. Her story about one hit and a fall was deemed unbelievable given the detailed accounts of the brutal beating.
And what about that argument regarding lack of intention to commit so grave a wrong? Did the SC address that mitigating circumstance?
They did, and they rejected it firmly. They pointed to the sheer excessiveness of the force used.
The broken hanger, the broom handle.
Yes, hitting him all over, including the head, and then that awful detail of inserting the handle into his mouth when he was already sick and weak. The court also noted her behavior afterwards.
Like dismissing his condition as pretending.
Exactly. Her lack of remorse, calling it pretense, failing to get him immediate medical help. The court said all of this showed an evil intent, far beyond discipline. It wasn't just an accident or discipline gone wrong.
So the conviction stood. Reclusion Perpetua. Did the monetary awards change much?
They were modified to align with current jurisprudence. Civil indemnity stayed at P75,000. But moral damages went up to P75,000, and exemplary damages also increased to P75,000.
Okay.
And they added P50,000 in temperate damages, since actual damages weren't proven with receipts, but it was clear the family incurred expenses. All these amounts also have a 6% annual interest from the finality of the decision until paid.
This case is just deeply disturbing. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, what systemic failures or, I don't know, societal attitudes might contribute to violence like this happening within a family.
It's a heavy question. How can communities, how can the legal system itself do better at protecting children inside their own homes?
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
Definitely raises profound issues about family dynamics, poverty, maybe substance abuse, and the adequacy of child protection services.
We'd really like to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts, your reactions to this case? Leave us a comment. And if this deep dive gave you a better understanding, please hit that favorite button.
It's worth quickly recapping some key legal doctrines highlighted here. First, parricide. Killing your parent, child, spouse, or other direct relative. You need to prove the killing, who did it, and that specific family relationship.
Got it.
Second, positive identification versus denial. When credible eyewitnesses point someone out, it usually outweighs a simple denial from the accused. Denial is generally seen as a weak defense on its own.
Makes sense.
Third, physical evidence. Things like the medico-legal report are powerful. Objective findings often carry more weight than conflicting testimonies.
Okay, the objective facts.
And finally, that mitigating circumstance of lack of intention. It doesn't apply if the way you acted was clearly capable of causing, and did cause, such a severe outcome, like death. The actions themselves can demonstrate the necessary intent or culpability.
Right. The court looks at what you did, not just what you claim you intended.
Precisely.
Well, this deep dive into People v. Salve Gonzales y Torno really underscores the judiciary's vital role in accountability, even when the crime occurs within the family.
It's also just a tragic, stark reminder of children's vulnerability and the absolute need to protect them.
Absolutely. If you want to continue exploring significant legal cases like this one and get more insights into the Philippine legal system, please do subscribe to our channel.
Join our community as we keep unpacking the complexities of law and society, one deep dive at a time.